Bum. Okay, those of you who are watching this on YouTube or otherwise recording, give me just a couple minutes to get everything all prepared and ready and stuff. Alrighty? Alrighty then. Also, just a minor warning to anyone else that might be in here watching, and that's that I have been having issues with connection lately. It's usually been in the daytime and it's been nice and hot, and I think there's something going on there. But this does mean that I might accidentally get dropped. But anyway, let's go ahead, and it's 6:03. Let's pop open the main camera. And hello. Say hello to Shinji, who's yeah, little baby girl. Alright, so there's pretty much nobody in here right now yet, but there might be somebody. But anyway, it says that I'm going to be sculpting Valandar. And for those of you who may be coming in from the Facebook group, it said that I'm sculpting myself. Yeah, that's pretty much what's happening. You see, the screen name Valandar, or as I use it in some places, Valandar the Red, came about from a character I played in Dungeons and Dragons back in, that would have been, that would have been like late 80s, early 90s. And it was a half-Elven Fighter-Mage in, I think it was 2nd edition. It was like the first character I made in 2nd edition. So, here I am, 1995. Time to start thinking about what name to use when on the internet. It's only been a couple years since I played this character. So it was a favorite. It was fun to play, so I used that name. 23 years later, I'm still using that name online. Here on Twitch, YouTube, well, not YouTube. These videos specifically are going to a secondary account dedicated to the sculpting of miniatures. Anyway, so, on Discord, even my work, my paying day job, quote unquote day job, I work from home, I used the name Valandar. So I figured, it'd probably be a good idea to finally sculpt a miniature for Valandar. Valandar the Red. Now, to give you this real quick, this was the miniature I used for years when I played that character. Okay? It's a Wood Elf War Dancer figure, shield on the belt, a short sword and a long sword. The only reason for that is that because it is an elf with a short sword and long sword. There, and is wearing light chain. That's the only reason, because otherwise he looks nothing like that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to kick on over to that studio and get to working. Okay? Now, one of the things is he had a ponytail. So we're going to load in a ponytail that I recently made and parent it to the head. We'll deal with the rest of that in a minute. I'm also going to go ahead and add on the tunic bottom, because yes, he wore tunics and other stuff, and that's the easiest way to close up the whole gap in between and make it tunic-sized anything, really. Now, as for his weapons, his in-game, the game rules that he used, it was a longsword and a short sword. The longsword now this is 2nd edition now, was a defender. I think it was a +4. And the short sword was a flame tongue short sword. So he called them Thunder's Edge and Dragon's Tail. Yes, they actually had names. Now, what that does is I actually designed them and I drew them out. And I discovered after I had created this, in fact, only relatively recently, just a few years back, that the design I came up with for Thunder's Edge, that was supposed to, game rules be treated like a longsword, was almost identical to a Kriegsmesser. Now, the Kriegsmesser is best way to describe it would be, it'd be like a large German katana. This that I had just put into his hand isn't, overly large so as to be cartoonish, but it looks good on a miniature Kriegsmesser. Now the thing is, the version that I had designed for Valandar the Red, you can see my mouse, I'm pretty sure. The pommel here, instead of just having a little nublet, was actually a full-on bird's head. It didn't so much have the nail, but I'm going to keep it just because it's appropriate. But this end, the end of the guard that went up the arm, was shaped like the bird's tail, while this end of the end that goes forward away from him and follows the edge, was curled down and shaped like the bird's claw. So I'm going to do my best to try and replicate that. Now, Dragon's Tail was a short sword, but specifically, it was a short sword that had been carved so that the knobs on either side of the guard and down here looked like claws. And the blade was ridged to make it look like it was carved from a dragon's tail bone. Now, I've been planning on doing this since earlier in the week, so I've done one little bit of cheating because I'm going to want to sculpt more than anything, and that's I've already come up with a pose for him. This is the pose for Valandar the Red. Now you'll notice that's him, but his ponytail is going through his shoulder. We'll fix that in a second. But if we zoom out and we look at it like it was a miniature, you see that the blades aren't that overly large. Not like they might seem. Meanwhile, let's go ahead. His hair there's going to be additional hair more than just that ponytail. Don't worry about that. But we're going to go ahead and, let's expand. Yeah. Ponytail hair 1. We're going to bend it up to there. Bend it just a little bit here. And now we're going to bend this further down. And then these two. The last two bits, we're going to bend almost against the back. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to select everything but the part close to the head, and we're going to go side to side. Give it a little bit of action. And that's looking kind of good. Now, the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to select those three, and we're going to X scale them, because that will help us make it look a little bit broader, a little bit bushier. That's good. We're going to select those and X scale them a bit more. Yeah, there we go. Now the last thing we got to do, because I mentioned before he was a half elf, but 50% elf doesn't really carry over well. So I'm just going to make the miniature look like a full elf. And this is what we are going to be sculpting on. Now the thing is, back in the late 90s, I started in a LARP called Amtgard. Amtgard, well, it was one of those where you have foam rubber swords and you hit people, and if you get hit in the arm, put the arm behind your back. Hit in the leg, you get down on that knee. Hit in the torso, you're dead. Head and neck shots weren't allowed because it was not safe. I mean, think about it. How would you get hit in the throat, even with a fun noodle on a stick? It's going to hurt, and you could possibly do damage. And if it was cold out and you got hit in the ear, I don't care if it's a frickin' piece of foam rubber, it's going to hurt. Anyway, I'm going to base his outfit on the garb that I wore as Valandar in Amtgard. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to export the basic geo. File, export. And once again, you can't really see what I'm doing right now because the way the screen capture works, it's capturing the program, but the save dialog isn't part of the program, it's part of the operating system. So, come on. We're going to call it Valandar. Except we are going to save the ponytail and the swords as a second object. Valand props. And then we're going to save the tunic bottom as yet another one. File, export, Valand tunic. Excuse me. And we're probably not going to be coming back in here. So what we got to do now is we got to go ahead and move to ZBrush. Nice little star down here, you know? Yeah. Well, I'm going to import. Let me get to it. Broadcast, import, Valandar. Yay! That's the geo for the basic body. And yeah, there's a lot to fix with this particular pose. I'm then going to append a subtool. And this subtool is going to be the tunic. And then I'm going to append a third subtool that's going to be the props. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to hide the props. And just to get a look, yeah, I'm going to give that. And now merge down. Now, when we look at it, it's for the most part reasonable in terms of polygon density. But we still need to go ahead and, before we do anything else, divide it until it's really nice and smooth. Figure about 1.61 million and delete lower. We zoom in because we're going to need to watch what happens at the waist. And what we're going to do is we're going to Dynamesh it. Resolution 768. Dynamesh. And there it goes. you'll notice that it's now kind of welded right around the waist. So we're going to smooth it. And this will help us get rid of that seam to make the tunic seem to be a one-piece tunic and not just a skirt around the waist with the butt poking through. Yeah, the butt poking through is a thing. Don't ask. It's not intentional. But anyway. Now we frame it. Okay. Now, the way that the garb is going to fit, well, first of all, I've got to get out Wacom. Yeah, my good old-fashioned, well, not old-fashioned, my good old reliable graphics tablet. And the first thing I've got to do before I do any of the garb is I've got to fix the musculature here on his back. Because of the way it was designed, the lats, the back of the mouse, back of the back, the musculature didn't come out right. So I've got to come in here and exaggerate. No, it was too much. Let's reduce the intensity and drop the size a little in here and fill in this part of the gap and then smooth it. Because you see, the lats actually come in behind the deltoid up there, not in front of it. And we're going to zoom in here just a little bit, not a lot. That was too much. Reduce the intensity, push it in, and then smooth it. And again, we're going to smooth out the entire chest area because this particular character is wearing not just a tunic, not just a mail shirt or byrnie on top of the tunic, but a tabard on top of that. Yeah. So we're going to smooth out much of the muscle. Not a lot, but much of it. And also a little spot over here that didn't smooth well when we started working on that. Okay. Here. Alright. Now, while I've got this in hand, I'm going to go ahead and do one other thing. I'm going to smooth closed. Not closed, but smooth small. The aperture of the mouth. Because that won't print well at all. It's enough to be open, but we don't want it hugely open. Alright, now, the tunic was a short sleeve tunic. So I'm going to draw on partial sleeves here in what's called a mask. Many of you have seen that, or not many, there's no such thing as many who watch my show, but those who have watched the show will know that what I'm about to do is I'm about to extract these out. And what that extraction does is it creates basically, well, this would be an armband, but armbands, this armband is going to be fused with the model at its base. So, we go in. Okay. And then the last thing is we're going to do the same near the neck. Although this is going to have a higher neckline than the actual tunic that I wore in garb as Valandar in Amtgard. I had a nice basic T-tunic with a rather low neck. Let's frame it. Now, every place that is masked, when I hit this extract, will be duplicated and given thickness. That thickness is down here, where it's just 0.02. Well, we're going to make that 0.03. It has been my experience that 0.02 is at the absolute edge of what can be accurately printed. So I click Extract, I click Accept, and I undo the masking on both it and the body. Now while I am here, this is, well, it's only a single polygon across this area here. See? There's plenty of detail around the sleeve itself, but where it juts out from, it's a single polygon. That's not cool. So, let me turn off the... What we're going to do is we're going to Dynamesh it. That doesn't look good. Let's go ahead and Dynamesh it at a 512. 256 rather. There we go. Now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to blend. We're going to smooth out just ever so slightly the edge of all of these little bands. And just a couple. The thing about smoothing is the fewer polygons that are under the brush when you smooth, the more it smooths them. The more polygons, the less it smooths them, because it's trying to average them all together. I'm going to go back in just a minute to deal with the actually blending that in, but you see what I'm doing here now. I'm blending this up a bit. Now, like I said, he wears on top of this a chainmail byrnie. What I was wearing for this was actual chain, and it weighed about 25, 30 pounds. It was made of 14 gauge steel, and for all intents and purposes, it always reminded me of a sleeveless t-shirt, and that's the look that his mail is going to go for. On top of that will be a tabard. Now, the tabard I wore had a specific coat of arms on it. The tabard on this miniature will not have anything sculpted on the tabard, so that it can still be used as, whatever character someone else wants to use the miniature as. You can put their own coat of arms on it, or none at all if they want just a basic field of color or what have you. Okay. Now, next thing we're going to do is we're going to use the Move tool. We're going to make it bigger, and we're going to move this deeper. Now, come on. We're going to move it into the arm, above and below. And as we do this, basically what we're doing is we're setting up for when we're going to do our next little bit of fusion of parts. Because that will be this. the sleeves and the neckline. The other thing we're going to do after we make sure that it goes into the body and the arms here is I'm going to actually give the sleeves a little bit of weight to make them look like they are in fact being pulled in, being pulled down by gravity and not just not just hanging out like pneumatic tubes. Also going to pull this neckline down a bit because it is way too much. Okay. Now what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and undo the Dynamesh just because and we're going to divide it a couple times. And delete lower. Now we're going to go to this, and I'm going to just use the slash tool to re-emphasize the eyes. The reason I'm doing that is because the eyes will lose detail with repeated Dynameshes. By kind of emphasizing the outline around the eyes, it may not look like much, but I hit one, it goes deeper. This will help keep, by emphasizing this, it will help keep the Dynamesh from washing the eyes out completely. I'm also going to go ahead and go under the nose. Once again, this is a detail that is probably going to end up being too small for FDM. Anyway. And so now we're going to merge down again. And once we get to the geometry, guess what? It's time to Dynamesh it again. Oh wait, no, I need to undo that Dynamesh because I forgot. I got to use the move tool to give it gravity. So we make the mouse a little bit bigger, and we're going to drag down the bottom of this. Whoops. We need to move the. We need to use the move topological tool because that was starting to move the whole arm. We need to move the sleeve down a bit. This will also help us to find some wrinkles later. We can bring the top of it down a little bit. Now, since this arm is actually kind of moving a bit, we're going to, instead of pulling it completely down, we're going to pull it out kind of to the back and down. And we don't need it as much frame. And now we're going to Dynamesh it. And there we go. We're going to shrink the mouse again and zoom in to where we have these parts meeting. And using the smooth brush, blend them all together so that they're a single piece. It looks like it's a tunic and not a guy with a kilt wearing a collar and upper armbands. I'm going to zoom in here and hit this too. Okay, and then the back of the arm, smooth it out. And the back of the neck, smooth that out. Okay, Now, just because I've got this nice tight area here, I can tell you right now that would be highly uncomfortable. So I'm going to get it to a nice angle and drag it down. So we have more of a, it looks more like clothing and not like some kind of weird anatomy. We frame it, and we have this. And I see another area we need to kind of, let's make it, fill this in a little bit. Oh, I have it on Z sub. I need it on Z add. Fill this out a little bit just to bring it out. A couple of light strokes, not a lot of pressure, and right along here. Let's bring that out. A couple light strokes, not a lot of pressure, and then okay. That's the tunic. Now it comes time to make the male Birni. Now here's the thing. The shoulders of the Birni were completely covered by the tabard. So, I'm not going to put shoulders on it. Instead, I'm going to make just the sides of the Birni. Because they'll be covered up by the tabard. And at first, it will look like it's just a form of, just another tunic. But once we get to detailing, that tunic will be textured to look like chainmail. This particular part of the figure. I'm going to go ahead and connect it well below the neck because I haven't decided how the tabard is going to hang. So until I do, I'm going to need to have as much of this visible beyond the shoulders. Now, one thing about my mail was that it had a zigzag, a dagged, as it was called, bottom. And rather painfully, one of the dags came down dead center here. The reason I say painfully is because that SOB would often, while I was running, come and smack me right in the mama daddy button. So we're going to go ahead and just draw some dags. We're going to use the deselect, unmask to sharpen these dags in a minute. In fact, we're going to use it right here to erase a good bit of this because that didn't come out right. Any errors, any mismeetings, we want to be near the back. Like that, because good odds are that the tabard back will go here. Let's go ahead and make it a little bit thicker and fill in a lot of this empty spot because we do need to do that. Let's go ahead and make this a little bit bigger until it's time to go in and fill in the dag or sharpen the dag. And yes, the term dag does come from the same root as the word dagger. It effectively, if I remember correctly, it means something like point. And fill that in. And then we fill in here. I'll say this, when it comes time to detail this, we are going to make the rest of the figure, the base figure, invisible. Because I don't want those arms in the way while I'm sculpting chainmail. I'm not going to worry so much about the one in the front center. That's almost certainly going to be covered by the... No, I better not be sloppy. Yeah, if you're sloppy, people notice. I freely admit I was sloppy back on Thursday. I don't know if anyone else noticed, but I noticed. I forgot to detail the hands on the Dragonborn Sorcerer. But I kept it as it is because, oh, come on. I kept it as it is because I've got to remember. If I don't do that, I won't remember. Okay. Now we're going to go back to Subtool, and we're going to extract it. You're only going to extract it at 0.02 because the adding of the 0.015, because the adding of the male detail will give it more thickness. Extract, accept, draw, select, draw, hide. And this is what our male looks like. We're going to go ahead and, as before, we're going to Dynamesh it at 512 actually, because we want a nice high number of polygons for this. And that does not look like enough polygons, so now we're going to subdivide it on top of that. That should be enough. Now the way we're going to do this, I'm going to use a technique where I load an alpha. Now I have an alpha for apparent chainmail, or apparent male, if you want to be more accurate, somewhere around here. Ah, here it is. And what an alpha does is, now when I draw, let's say I go to drag rectangle. That's not very powerful. Let's bring it up just to show you. When I drag and pull, it pulls out that shape. Whatever is white, down right there, right below my shoulder, appears on the mesh. Now I don't want it to be like that. I'm going to be using instead dots, and I'm coming up here to where it says lazy mouse. I'm turning on lazy mouse, and I'm turning the lazy step to 0.666666666 number of the beast. The reason for this is now, let me make this bigger. I drag it up, and it still not quite enough. Let's undo that. Let's make it 0.8. There we go. Now, real male hangs so that those rows are parallel, because you want the flexibility this way. The flexibility this way you don't want. I mean, like on your arm, you want the flexibility to be going like this, so you can bend your elbow, not like this, so that you don't need to bend your Like, how do you bend your arm like that? You don't. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off down here on the bottom and just start putting on rings. Actually, let's turn off lazy mouse first and turn down intensity. And put one of these in the bottom of each of the dags. Move this. Then we're going to go ahead and turn the lazy mouse back on, put this back up to about 40. And we're going to start from center over here and draw around. Alright, that didn't work. Let's draw it from here. And then, what the heck? There we go. Now, I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way. I'm going to use drag dot. Oh, turn off lazy mouse. Alright, so it's going to be one here, one here. I'm just going to place them. This is going to take a while. It's going to be somewhat irregular. Now, I'm going to poke my head in. And hello, Average Crazy Asian. Welcome. As you may or may not be able to tell, all I am really doing right now is I am sculpting a miniature. To be exact, it's a miniature of a character I played when I was very much younger. No. Why does it always do that? It always flips right before it gets to where I want it to be. Okay. And then another one coming from this way. One coming from over here. One coming from over here. I'll go ahead and add more. I'll just go back to this, because I'll just add more in place with the dot method. This ends up looking a bit more effective. Okay. And hopefully this will end up making it look pretty decent. I have to wonder about whether or not this will show up on FDM, but I'm rather pessimistic about details on FDM, having had problems with some details myself in the past. Like I said, I'm going to come back and deal with... Nah, that one didn't look good. That one came out horrible. I'd come back on myself in a minute and come fill in gaps with the drag dot tool, or drag dot brush. Alright, and over here. Alright, now switch this back to drag dot, turn off lazy mouse, and just kind of fill in some gaps here. The thing is, real life mail would have gaps in it, but it just doesn't look as good on the miniature. Yeah, let's turn the lazy mouse back on. I just realized I forgot the entire back. Okay. So. And this should finish it off. Because the rest will be covered. Okay. Frame out. Inventory, no. Subtool, there we go. Bing. Frame. Alright, now we're going to hide this. And we're going to draw out where our tabard is going to be coming from. And so to do that, we're going to do exactly what we did with all the other outfits so far. We're going to mask off a section of our figure. Now the tabard is pretty wide. I'm going to cover a good bit of the chest and torso. It's not as wide as a historical tabard, but again, like I said, I'm basing this off me. Off of what I wore as in Amtgard. So this is going to be a combination of what I wore in Amtgard and what my character wore in D&D. And I'm going to trim the bottom edge of this just barely. Although eventually I'm going to be actually dragging it down lower than the bottom of the tunic. Okay, now I'm going to bring this down to there. And as I did on the front, I'm going to remove the bottom edge just to sharpen up the selection. Frame. And need to kind of select here. Now, we are going to go back to geometry. No, retaining subtool, that's right. We're going to extract. This one's going to be 0.035. Extract. Accept. Draw. And we are going to Dynamesh it. And now that we have nice large polygons, we can kind of smooth out the chest area a bit. And smooth out the back a little. And now we're going to make the male visible to make sure that it covers all of the male. And it does. Great. Excellent. And now I'm going to go to the Move tool. I'm going to make it bigger. I'm going to make it bigger and bring it down just enough to make the edges sharp enough to print, but not so poofy that they look like they're, just kind of flying out there. And then I'm going to bring it out, make it much bigger. I'm going to drag it down longer than the tunic. And the back as well. Okay. Now the last thing to put on the torso is going to be his belt. So we're going back here. We're going to hide those. And we're going to give him a belt. Now the belt that I had was a moderately historically accurate thing. It was one that you had to do this weird knot and pass it through a ring, and that's just way too much detail. People have gotten used to seeing ordinary belts in miniatures, so I'm just going to draw a nice thick belt. And just kind of bring it around back, just above the back of the hip. And connect it right here. What do you know, I actually managed to bring it around almost perfectly even on the first try. Zoom out and extract it at 0.045. Accept, draw the line, and make everything visible. And then I'm going to Dynamesh it. Slightly higher resolution than normal because I want it to be relatively sharp. And then just a very faint just enough to kind of blend it in and make it not quite as nope, that was too much. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this Move tool again, this time to to bring make the bottom edges even. You see, when I pushed it out like that, some areas of the bend made it come out further, thus made the belt not a perfect width around. And that's not always something you can predict, so it's just a good idea just to wait until you actually do it and then fix it. Okay. I zoom out. And now zoom back in. And I'm going to subdivide it a couple times until it's relatively. Delete lower. And then I'm going to make my belt buckle. Okay, and I'm going to do that by exactly the way I've done the other pieces of clothing, although this is going to be, 0.02 should do it. Extract, accept, draw the line, and now move. Oh, don't do that. Move this so that it's more square. I'm then going to Dynametric base, make the mouse bigger, and smooth it. Now, here we go. That's better. That's much better. It's more like what I was hoping to see happen. There we go. And now let's Dynamesh it at 256. Dynamesh. And divide it a couple times to match it up. Delete lower. And now we frame. And that's our clothing. No, it's not! That's our torso clothing. Okay. And so we go back to our buddy, the body. And we're going to hide everything else we've made. So all we have is him in this tunic. What we do next is we're going to make his bracers. Ordinarily, I would have already gone in and fixed the forearm musculature, but it's going to be covered up. Make this mouse a little bit smaller. He wore bracers. To be exact, he wore leather bracers, but it's not going to matter on a miniature because you decide what the material is when you paint it. Yes, it's entirely possible to paint a heavily armored knight as if he was wearing bullhide armor. Although, really, why? Because as it's been shown and proven on various sites, including various YouTube channels, that contrary to popular belief, leather is not that great of an armor. It's great for ablative armor, which is pretty much what you want in a situation like riding a motorcycle. Then again, I've also heard it said that wearing your leathers on a motorcycle isn't so much to protect you from injury, but to make sure that you're all in one bag when it all comes to an end. And instead of just being in multiple baggies. You break bones, but you don't get ripped apart. Okay. So, since, like I said, since I've done miniatures for all the players in my game, I'm probably going to start and make miniatures for old characters that I used to play. That may or may not be appropriate for other people. I say this because I played a couple complete and utter goofballs in my time. I mean, let's see, there was Kalkurataz the Whiskerandian, the dwarf that thought he was a barbarian, but was actually a priest of Clengeddon Silverbeard, because Clengeddon thought he was hilarious. Yeah, really. In all seriousness. Whoopsie daisy. Yeah, nope, we don't want that. Delete. Okay. And go to here. Oh, I see. I did it at 0.3 instead of 0.03. Yay. Extract. Accept. Draw the line. Delete. Yeah. 0.02. Extract. Accept. That was just a bit too much. Now, the bracers, I'm going to draw a plate on the back and a groove on the inside. These might be too much for FDM printers, but, you know, hey. For those of you with the oh, it would help if I dynameshed them. Okay. Consider it a bonus for the people with the FDMs, with the SLA and DLPs. Okay. That's good enough. It's another little detail. Okay, the next step is the boots. Now the boots are going to be easy. The boots and breeches are going to be easy. And the reason I say that is because it's just basically going to be a little cuff around the calf. And each of these cuffs is just going to be turned into the upper cuff of a pair of boots. So we're going to select a square. And select a square. And these are going to be extracted at 0.35 or 0.035. Extract. No. 0.03. Extract. Yeah, accept. So now we're going to go ahead and sculpt these on a little bit. I will let you know, we still have a lot to do with respect to wrinkles in the clothing. If you watched what I did Thursday, you'll see that, yeah, even just a basic, simple garment can have quite a lot of interesting effects. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use standard brush. We're going to turn off Lazy mouse, we're going to turn off the alpha. We're just going to kind of play with it until we get a nice side depth for these. Okay, that's a decent enough depth. We're going to come to the top and come down towards the front. And then kind of come in down here. And come in like this. Kind of the opposite. Stop it. I'm going to do something similar down here. Now, it doesn't look right yet, but it will. Now we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to come diagonally down to the front. A little dip down here. And then we're going to come diagonally up towards the back. Oh. It's going to meet. Stop that. There. Now, they don't look right. That's okay. They don't have to yet, because what we're going to do now is we're going to first we're going to edge them. Now, actually, we need to see what's in there. Frame. Okay. We're going to use move before we edge them to get them into position. We're going to move topological. We don't want to accidentally grab the wrong one. We're going to make it a big brush. We're going to grab the bottoms and move them out, and the tops and move them in. Because we want to make it look like a boot cuff, not a sausage. And that's everywhere on it. We want to try and make, even with these wrinkles, we want to try and keep the basic shape that we want. And that's just a bit too far out right here, so we're going to bring it in. By the way, if any of you are looking for something to watch that's not on Twitch, there's an anime, and I know some of you are going, ew, anime, called My Hero Academia. It's really an interesting look on superhero and superhuman society in a world where most people have at least a minor superpower. And the ones that have the really strong ones, well, they're the ones that really matter, aren't they? Everyone knows that strength is what matters. Or is it? What happens when somebody weak becomes strong? And somebody strong is forced to admit that a weak person isn't weak anymore. Okay, that's our basic shape. We're going to go ahead and close this and go back to geometry, and we're going to make it sharp a little bit. And now what we're going to do, we're going to use slash. We're going to add, lower the intensity and lower the size, and we're going to draw on the bottom. That's still way too large and not strong enough. Turn off lazy mouse. And we're going to draw along the bottom of these and hit smooth to sharpen the wrinkle and to make it look like it's being affected by gravity. It'll also help us separate some of these wrinkles. Okay. Okay, and oh, that's not along the bottom. Anyway, so what does being a hero mean? That's a question that you know, a lot of people really can't answer. Some might say that it's someone who risks his life for other people, or risks his livelihood. And other people might say, no, it's somebody who puts on a mask and fights crimes, and no, that's a superhero. And not even all of them do that. And then you'll still have more people who will insist there's no such thing as a hero. That even someone who dies saving the life of someone else did it for a selfish reason. And it's those people that I really, really pity. It's amazing some of the things that go through my head as I'm sitting here trying to draw out a fantasy elf character. Okay, the next thing we're going to do, I'm going to need this on, is I'm going to draw on, is I'm going to start work on the hair. And just in case, I need to go ahead and select those props and subdivide them a couple times. 578,000. Okay. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw, I'm going to select and that. I'm going to split masked points. Okay. And what that does, now the hair is separate. It allows me to kind of go up here and then merge down. Nope, nope, I don't want to merge down. That's right, I need to draw the hair on top first before we do this. And I'm going to do that much the same way I've done clothing. I'm going to draw the hairline, the scalp. Especially considering that this particular character, his hair is mostly pulled back. Okay. And fill in this area here. And one of the things we're going to do is we're going to refine that hairline a bit. For one, we want him to have a kind of a cow, almost a widow's peak, but not a lot. So we're going to come around from each side and raise the hairline a bit and come down at an angle. And then we're going to cut there. Make it a sharp Okay. So now we're going to extract this at 0.3. Accept. Draw. Select him. Draw. Go back here. Make the ponytail visible. And now we're going to take the scalp we just made. We're going to dynamize it and then subdivide it a couple times. Then, to go back up here to Subtool, we're going to merge this down into there. We're going to make him visible again, but he's just there as a placeholder, and we're going to dynamize it. The reason for that is to make this one piece of air. And then that's the very thing. Okay. We're also going to smooth out the corners a bit and the front because we don't want it to be welcome back Cotter. Alright, now we're going to subdivide it until it's a reasonable, and by reasonable I mean absolutely unreasonable amount of polygons. And now we turn to the slash. We're turning to the slash, yeah. We're doing it, I'm telling you. It's like that, you know? Yeah. Oh, come on. Brain goes pooped. Okay. We're going to end up adding on... Let's go ahead and add on the little ponytail holder tie thing here. It's just going to be a simple... Off goes the body. A simple band coming out and around. Because, again, this is something that it may not be something that most FDMs can print. There might be a couple out there who can. You want this detail there, just in case. That's all it is, just a tiny little detail. But, yeah. And then Dynamesh it. Oh, nope, wrong one. Select, yeah, the ponytail holder. Dynamesh. Not too far. Dynamesh. And subdivide a couple times. And that's all we need. And delete lower. And go back to the hair and the person. And let's go ahead and back. Okay, good. This gives us a good bit to work with here. Let's make the mouse bigger and hit with smooth just to make it rounder and more of a detail and less of a huge chunk thingy sticking out. Okay, and then back to the hair. Now what we're going to do is what we do every time with the hair. We got the slash. We're going to make the lines deep. And we're going to go ahead and turn on Lazy Mouse with a decent amount. Because we're going to need it for working with that hair. Now, we're going to go ahead and draw on not deep enough. it's going to look unrealistically deep, because you and I are currently seeing that hairpiece and the scalp as two separate objects. But when it's all one surface and blends in, it won't look like scalp. It'll look like the rest of the hair. Alright, that's the problem, is it's too big. Okay. Now what we're doing is we're drawing on the main locks. You're not going to be, if you're doing something similar, you don't want to draw every single piece of hair. All you want to draw is the primary locks of hair that make up your character's hairstyle. The large chunks. In his case, his hair is mostly pulled to the back to make it good for that, to make it good for the pulling back. So for the most part, it's going to, at least from here, kind of start going back and down from here. And then now it looks like it's going to be rather ragged and jagged and sharp, and that's because it is. You see, this is being designed to be painted, and that means we want surfaces to be able to grab that paint and not let go and just hold on and be easy to paint. And so we work it out. Now the next thing we do is I make that mouse big again, and I'm going to smooth it a bit. This will help give a bigger gap between these hair locks, make them more exaggerated. And again, you'll see it's not realistic at all, but it will help. It's not realistic at all, but it will help when it comes to paint time. Now, we're going to deal with the post ponytail in a minute, but what we're going to do now is we're going to add sharp edges. We're going to turn off the lazy mouse and go sharp. Make it smaller. We're going to draw along the edges. Now, make it a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger. By drawing along the edges, what we're doing is we're making areas for the brushes. Oh, that's way too strong. Let's drop that down. We're making these areas that the brush can grab. See, most people paint hair with what's called a dry brush. That dry brush has had most of the paint actually wiped off onto a paper towel or a rag or something akin, and then it's brushed over the surface. These sharper edges allow that dry brush to scrape and leave behind the pigment, which is, that's the whole goal of anything painting, is to leave behind pigment to show a color or even just a shade. So by making these edges sharper, it's becoming more likely that it will catch the paint well, and that will give us a better illusion of hair. Now I zoom out. You can already see it looks like hair, although just the basic raw chunks of it. We go ahead and we're going to turn that back on, and now it's going to be time to make this. I hate it when it does this. It's going to be time to make the locks of the ponytail. Now what we're going to do is we're going to we're going to come in. No, not enough. Here we go. We're going to make individual locks. Because that's what happens. Even when it's all bound together, it eventually becomes individual locks of hair. And by becoming individual locks, it effectively gives us some detail to work with on this hair. And we're going to do otherwise the exact same thing we did before. We're going to draw the edges out. Oh, no. And by drawing these edges, give more stuff for paint to hang on to. And we're gonna hit with a smooth just a little bit, because that basically that's mostly for preventing anomalies in the geometry and anything else. And here we go with our hair almost complete. Now we frame out, and we can see that that hair came out pretty good. Okay, and now comes the worst part. Now comes the wrinkles. Oh, the wrinkles are tedious. Trust me, they are tedious. While I pop my knees. And wait a second. Do I have an interloper right here? Yes, I have. Oh, he's asleep. Never mind. He fell asleep. But yeah, time to make the wrinkles. I went kind of in depth about wrinkles when I was making the Dragonborn Sorcerer earlier this week. And I'm going to go ahead and just give a basic rough overview again. There's effectively a few kinds of wrinkles, 3 primary kinds of wrinkles. And these kinds, it depends on what's causing them, as what these wrinkles are. For example, at the waist, there's not going to be any waist wrinkles here, because it's all going to be covered up by the male. But at the waist, there's compression wrinkles, and then here, There's wrinkles from hanging. These are the drapery wrinkles. And it's where the artistic term gets its name. Drapery. And we're going to sharpen them. Just like we did the folds. Just like we did the locks of hair. Because cloth folds also catch paint. They also don't bend smoothly. See, cloth bends at an angle. If you go in and look at the sculpted cloth on the statues of the great masters, and you'll see that they have sculpted those wrinkles as being sharp. We're going to make the mail and tabard visible. The reason for that is we're going to use the move brush to pull these clothing bits out of these wrinkles we just made. Because those wrinkles are poking through our chainmail layer. And we don't want that. We want it to be distinct. We are also going to be adding wrinkles to the tabard, and to do that we need to increase its geometry quite a bit. Because right now it's only got 6,000 triangles. Or not 6,000, but like there we go, 100,000, that should be good. And we're going to add on the wrinkles for this. However, to do so, before we do that, we need to make sure we moved it off of the chainmail that we just moved. Because once again, we need it distinct and separate. Okay. Now, I said it earlier, there's compression wrinkles, and that's what most of this will be above the waist. We're going to start off with standard, and what we're going to do is we're just simply going to draw a few lines coming up. And it's at its most, these lines are going to be at their thickest, where they're at their deepest. We're also going to go ahead and smooth out the tops of these wrinkles. I'm going to make them a little bit bigger down near their bottoms. And then we're going to smooth them out. The reason for this is because this is where baggy clothes go to hang. This is what happens when the baggy clothes get gathered in by the belt. And now we go to slash. Because what happens next is what a lot of people don't expect. The folds actually go and make a U shape. We're going to go ahead and hit a little bit of smoothing on those, especially up at the top. And then we're going to add in the hues again. Oh, way too much. Again, a lot of this detail might be too much, but I'd rather there to be too much of this kind of detail and for it to come out really nicely on a really dialed in printer, and for this detail not to be there and look to be just simple, plain, and boring flat surfaces. Okay, now we go back to here. We're once again going to draw our compression base wrinkles. And smooth them in a bit. But yeah, when cloth folds, it folds in an angle. It does not fold like, you know, a nice curve like we'd imagine. And this angle is basically, you know, it's based on where what's called the warp and weft are. The warp and weft are especially for mostly for woven products, but it's the alternating horizontal and vertical threads in the cloth. It's not so much found in knits, but it's pretty much exactly what it's. Like I said, it's the fibers of the cloth. Forgot to drop this back down to 8. But those warp and weft give us the lines along which cloth folds. And as such, we include them, or we at least pay homage to the fact that they exist, by making sure that our folds are sharp. And as I also said, this also is how, you know, this also helps get the cloth to catch paint. Alright, now, below the waist, these areas are going to have a combination of compression and hang. And what that's going to do is, actually, what that's going to do is it means that the tops of the wrinkles are going to behave kind of like compression wrinkles, while the bottoms are going to behave more like hanging wrinkles. So we're going to give a slash sub 16. I'm going to draw in our little hooks and our little grooves into these. And drop it down to 8. The bottom of these little hooks is going to get the most attention and the longest line, because that's the bottom of the wrinkle. And then we smooth it out a little bit. And the end result is we've got some nice wrinkles. I'm going to go back to standard and bring this out a little. Bring this out a little. Blend it. Okay. Smooth that off. Now, it doesn't need to look exactly photoreal. A miniature is not portraiture, it is impressionism. You don't want an exact, perfect model of what a greater demon looks like. You want a model of the feeling of a greater demon. And as such, what one person sees as a greater demon, someone else might see as simply another critter, or maybe a weird critter, but just another critter. And thus we have things like in Dungeons and Dragons, there's a moderate power demon called a Vrock, V-R-O-C-K. They've been around since first edition, although back then Vrock was the name of just one specific member of this particular species of demon. And since second edition, it's become the name of the whole species. Ever since the whole debacle with Tanari and Batezu. And it looks like a Vulture Man. Then, in Warhammer, you have a demon that looks like a Vulture Man. Both of them are much larger than a human. Have vulture-like heads on long necks. Have arms and legs and wings. And the wings are separate limbs from the arms, which end in talon-like hands. Both even have magical abilities. And for the most part, that's about where it all ends. Because there we go. Okay, so for the most part, the last thing left to do on this would be the weapons in the hands. Because the weapons have their own little magic that I need to work on for them. Specifically, the short sword. What I need to do, the short sword, the version that Valandar the Red used, was carved to look like a dragon's tail. However, I forgot to mask. Where is that? I'm going to mask off. Not mask off, but is there masking? No. Contact, no. No, vector, display properties. We want it double-edged. Unified skin is really important. Okay, I have forgotten where to get the mask back facing. So I'm going to go ahead and Google it. Yay! And that's going to be not affect back facing Z brush. Auto masking. Okay. Ow, ow. Brush auto mask. There we go. Okay, so I go to brush auto masking. Hey, there it is. Backface mask. There we go. And now I'm going to once again sit here and draw on what will be the sculpt for the short sword. And again, this is going to be something that's probably not going to be visible on a FDM printer. Actually, I can probably get away with far fewer of those that go farther out. So I'm going to change the intensity from 8 to 12. And I'm going to come in up here. And up here. And up here. I mentioned it before. This is impressionism, not portraiture. We want the impression of how it looks. In this case, the impression that it's carved from a dragon's tail. Here. And I'm going to smooth it, smooth this, and smooth this. Now I'm going to Z sub at -7. So I can come in here and come in and sharpen the underside. Yay! Weep, weep. Ba weep, grana weep, mini bong. Yay! I love being a 50-year-old geek, or darn near 50 actually. Alright, and then I'm going to shrink the mouse and smooth above the grooves. Frame just to get a good look. Okay, yeah. That's looking nice. I'm going to leave the handle as it is. Now, here, I'm going to mask off the pommel. The reason being is because it needs to be. And then, oh look, I'm going over here to masking and hitting inverse. There. Now with it being the only thing not masked, I go to deformation, and I'm going to inflate it. That's good. And then I'm going to make the mouse, the cursor very large. Not quite that large. I'm going to move and making the focal shift really large. Up there. Yeah. And bring it in just a little bit closer. Alright, now we're going to shrink the mouse. No, after I drop the focus shift back to 0. Shrink the mouse. Make the focus shift even smaller and draw out the beak. And draw it out from here too, because apparently it didn't really. And then smooth. Grab this and pull it up a lot, and then smooth it. The whole thing. Yeah. Now I'm going to bring the focal shift back, make it a little bit bigger. Grab the center back here, bring it up, because it was up on the original. And also here, let's bring this up. I'm not going to bother trying to turn that into a claw, but the fact that it looks different from the standard is enough. Now, the last thing I've got to do before I base this guy. Excuse me while I base this guy. Let's go ahead and merge everything else down. The reason I want to do this is we're pretty much done here. And I need to go in and on him, on his hands, I need to detail the hands. Actually, I also need to give him a little bit more jawline, because the elven jawline is not quite half elven enough. Grab it and bring it out just a little. Make him a little bit more square jawed than a typical elf. Also going to bring up the brow. Make him bring down the inner brow. Now, what we need here is we need inflate, and we need to make sure we get it roughly the same width as the fingers. Now, let's move around here. A lot of the details that are part of the human hand are too small to be seen. But if we exaggerate them to be seen at the seeable, then even if it's too small to actually be seen, but if it's just enough to give the impression that it's there, to help shape the impression of the overall outside form. And what I do is I draw the knuckles on, and then shape the space and smooth the space between them. After I've done this, I go back in and I exaggerate the division between the fingers. What this does is this helps make the fingers look less like bent Vienna sausages and more like jointed fingers from a human hand. And I do the same thing on the thumb, but first I have to go in. You'll notice that thumb kind of collapsed in on itself a bit, so I've got to inflate the inside of that thumb. When it comes time to actually do the final blendings, that'll all get smoothed in. Now, I draw on a much larger area for that knuckle back here at the base of the hand, and draw on a knuckle here and a knuckle there. And I smooth out the surfaces once again. Then it's time I grab the slash tool, set it to subdivide. Yeah, that's good enough. Nice. No, it's not good enough. I slash between the fingers. Especially in situations like the split between the middle finger and the ring finger near the end. It actually blended together right here. Now, this finger looks like it also blended together down here with the index. And now, compare that right hand with the left. Very subtle, very minor things that makes that hand look so much better and not like the hand of a puppet. And now, go back to our inflate. And while I'm thinking about, let's go ahead and inflate the thumb, inner thumb, so I don't have to worry about that when it comes time. Okay, now, once again, the middle, just to let you know, the middle finger and the ring finger tend to be roughly the same length, with the index and the ring, with the middle finger being slightly longer and the pinky being shorter. These are the tendons on the backs of the hand. They are only there as suggestions. They will be almost invisible when printed. 2, 3, 4. And we blend that in. Blend together the fingers. And a little bit of blending on the knuckles here. And now, index knuckle, middle knuckle, ring knuckle, pinky knuckle. I would not want to get damaged in my pinky knuckle. Although that does sound like a euphemism for genitalia, now that I'm thinking about it. Man, I will kick you in the pinky knuckle. Oh man, he kicked him in the pinky knuckle so hard he ain't never having kids. Yep. And now, let's frame the whole thing. And the next thing we have left to do, well, besides merging down, so it's all one subtool. Well, I'm going to go ahead and smooth out the blade of the short sword just a little bit. Once again, we want it to be the impression more than anything else. There. And now I got to load in a base. So we append polymesh, and we import the default base. This is the default, as it says, default base for a 28mm figure. And we need to geometry subdivide it a couple times. Delete lower. The other thing we need to do is we need to lower it. And once we lower it, then we can go ahead and figure out where it needs to be. Okay, that's good enough. We want the toe and feet to be kind of fused together. Now, as you can see, he's off center. We need it to go, whoop, and now X. That's about right. And here we go. Zoom out. And for the most part, I'm done with the Wacom tablet. So now what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead. We're going to merge it down onto the base. We have our single final item, but we need to make it a single surface. I'm going to take my computer's life in my hands and hit it with this level of subdivision, because this way we can make sure that everything is as high resolution as possible before we actually get to turning it into one surface. And we now have 8.2 million polygons. So the next step is we go to Dynamesh. Blur 0, 1024 resolution. And we go Dynamesh. All right. Good hit. Z. Because I forgot to delete the lower subdivision. Dynamesh. There we go. And we now have 2.154 million polygons. If we zoomed in on this sucker, let's say we zoom in on the chest here. And we hit that. Look how small those polygons are. 2.4 million of them. And we honestly don't need all of those polygons. We need orders of magnitude fewer. So what we do, we go up to Z plugin, click on Decimation Master. I'm going to divide it down to roughly 70,000 polygons. And I click it. And it's going to take a few. And you might see me hiccup, I don't know. I'm not sure if it's going to do that way with the live broadcast or if it's going to do it with the recording. It all depends, because you can't see it because my head's in the way, but it's slowly calculating them their percentage points. 20%, you know, 30, that sort of thing. And 50. You can see it now. It's a little orange line. It's barely visible. And it's computing. Please wait. And it goes from 2.154 million polygons. Oh, I got to pet the cat when you say that. Yeah, kitty, kitty, kitty. Goes from that to, let's see if it gives us a full, exact, accurate count. Well, it'll be accurate, yeah, but will it be the full, exact count? Well, it's reading to go ZFO. 70,013 polygons. And yet, looking at it from this tier, you can't see any difference. We have to zoom into that chest, and now you can see a difference. You'll notice that at areas where it needed more detail, like in around the wrinkles here, it has more polygons. But areas that it doesn't, such as on the flat surface of the base, it has fewer. That's what it does. It calculates where it needs those polygons and where it doesn't. The flat blade, mostly flat blade of Thunder's Edge, doesn't have as many polygons as the mostly shaped blade of Dragon's Tail. Either way, we now have the base mesh for our miniature. This can now be exported out. Let's undo the, turn off the Dynamesh. You can now export. Exporting to Broadcast Miniatures and Valandar the Red. Honestly, I think this is probably one of my best figures I've done, period. And not just because it's of me, but because it's got flesh details with the hands and the face. It's got mail. It's got wrinkles. It's got, a slightly sculpted blade. It's got hair. I think this turned out very, very nicely. And I know there's nobody else in here watching, but to anyone who eventually ends up watching this on YouTube, or you can show up on my Twitch account and look back in the back, you'll see that this is pretty much what's the what. It also appears I seem to have forgotten to turn on corrective lighting in my webcam software. Oh look! You can see me now! Yay! Alright. Well, that is that for tonight. I will get this up on Thingiverse here in just a little bit, and I'll be moving the recording of the broadcast up to YouTube just as soon as I finish that. So I'd like to say thank you for watching if you are watching. If you're not, then how would you even know I'm talking to you? And if you haven't already, like and subscribe, the whole 9 yards, blah, 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 whatever. I'm not going to be able to get any kind of audience, really. But yeah, that is Valandar the Red. That is me sculpting a fighter mage with dual-wielding weapons. Thank you very much. Now what's going to happen? What's going to happen besides me doing a pretty crappy imitation of Bill Clinton? I'm going to hold my hand up off to the side of the screen here. And I will be looking for, on Twitch, for my hand to count from 5 to 1. When I get to the 1, I go goodbye. Alrighty? So that's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Whole lot of lag today, isn't there? Yep, whole lot of lag. Alright, bye.